So, I, 24F, recently moved into a new apartment, excited to start fresh in a city that felt full of possibilities. Everything was going well, until I met my neighbor, Greg, 30SM. He introduced himself right after I moved in, offering to help with boxes and even bringing over homemade cookies, which I thought was sweet. At first, he seemed like a genuinely nice guy. We exchanged small talk, and I figured, hey, it's great to have a friendly neighbor. But as the weeks went by, his friendliness took a turn that left me feeling uneasy. It started with him showing up unannounced. I'd be in the middle of cooking or binge-watching a show, and there he'd be, grinning at my door. "Just thought I'd check in," he'd say. At first, I laughed it off, but as it happened more frequently, I started feeling trapped. I'd say I was busy or tired, but he didn't seem to get the hint. One evening, I was having a particularly rough day. I had just gotten some disappointing news about a job I really wanted. I wanted nothing more than to unwind. Instead, there was a knock at the door. I peeked through the peephole, and there was Greg, holding a bouquet of flowers. My heart sank. I felt so anxious. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but I also didn't want to engage. I didn't answer. The next day, I found the flowers and a note slipped under my door that read, "Hope you're feeling better. Let me know if you need anything." It felt sweet, but the pressure of his intentions was suffocating. I confided in my best friend about the situation. She was furious, insisting I needed to set boundaries. Gathering my courage, I decided to confront him. The next time I ran into him in the hallway, I took a deep breath and said, "Greg, I really appreciate your kindness, but I need some space. I'm not looking for a friendship right now." His smile faltered. "But I thought we were friends," he said, his voice rising slightly. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I stood my ground and hurried back to my apartment, locking the door behind me. That night, I heard persistent knocking. I ignored it, but when I woke up the next morning, I found a note slipped under my door, "I'll be waiting for you to change your mind." I felt a wave of dread wash over me. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was becoming frightening. Desperate for help, I reached out to my landlord and explained everything. They assured me they'd speak to Greg, which offered some relief. But the very next day, as I was out for a walk to clear my head, I spotted Greg sitting on a bench in the nearby park. He looked lost in thought. My heart raced, and I quickly turned to leave, but he called my name. I froze, panic coursing through me. I hurried back home, praying he hadn't seen me. A few days later, I received yet another note taped to my door, "You can't hide from me. I just want to help." I felt sick. This was crossing a line, and I knew I had to act. I told my friend what had happened, and she encouraged me to involve the police if he continued to harass me. I felt embarrassed at the idea, but I knew I needed to protect myself. A week later, I was at home when I heard loud banging on my door. My heart raced as I approached cautiously. It was Greg, looking frantic. "I know you're in there. Please, just talk to me," he yelled. I was terrified. I couldn't deal with this anymore. I called the police, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. They arrived quickly, but by the time they got to my apartment, Greg had left. The officers assured me they'd patrol the building for a while. It felt good to have someone looking out for me, but I was still on edge. That night, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, when I heard another knock. This time, it was louder, more aggressive. I held my breath, frozen in fear. The pounding continued, and I felt tears prick my eyes. My heart raced as I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I grabbed my phone and called my landlord again, explaining that I couldn't stay in this apartment. The next morning, I found another note that read, "You've gone too far. I only wanted to be your friend." I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I couldn't risk my safety any longer. With my landlord's help, I broke my lease and found a new apartment in a different neighborhood. The move was swift, but the relief I felt was overwhelming. Just when I thought things were settling down, I went out to grab groceries a few days later. As I turned the corner to head back home, I nearly collided with Greg. My heart dropped, and I felt a wave of panic. "There you are," he said, grinning. "I've missed you. We need to talk." I didn't know what to do. I quickly pulled out my phone and texted the police, letting them know I was in danger. I backed away slowly, trying to keep my composure. "I'm not ready to talk, Greg," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Before he could respond, I heard sirens in the distance. Greg's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "You called the cops on me?" he shouted, and in that moment, I knew I was right to reach out for help. The police arrived quickly, and I pointed Greg out. He tried to run, but they apprehended him just a few yards away. I watched as they handcuffed him, my heart racing, but also relieved. Once they had him in custody, one of the officers came over to me. "You did the right thing. We'll take it from here." They took my statement and assured me that they'd pursue charges for harassment. The whole experience felt surreal, but ultimately, I was grateful. Greg was arrested, and I learned that trusting my instincts was crucial. I could finally breathe a little easier, knowing that I had taken steps to protect myself. Now, as I settle into my new place, I'm learning to take precautions and trust my instincts more than ever. I still have moments when I look over my shoulder, but I'm finally beginning to feel safe again.